So on Thursday, July 27, the Panama City Beach City Council is going to cast its second vote. It requires 2 votes to pass the ordinance that amends. And I'm going to be specific, and I'm even going to show you the attorney, Cole Son Davis. I'm going to show you his explanation. I'm going to show you the entire discussion with the city council. So that I don't get it wrong. All right. There's a few specifics that I want to make sure we're accurate on. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. They are looking to pass, and they will if they get 3 votes. They got 4 votes last time. An ordinance that amends the emergency powers of one person, the city manager. The city manager would have the authority, and it says this in the ordinance, to limit the rights and the liberties. It says rights and liberties of businesses and individuals for up to 72 hours. And if the council comes in behind it and votes to, they can violate your rights and liberties, but only for 42 days, no more than that. And that's state statute. The state limits cities to that. But it doesn't require that cities adopt it. And that's an important point. Because you're going to see Councilman Mike Jarman, who is, I think, the most dishonest of all of the council members. The most. You're going to hear him pull the old Adrian Welly routine, where he pretty much just says half of the sentence. He'll say, well, it's not wide sweeping. It's only for targeted areas. No, it's wide sweeping. It's for the entire city, but it gives the city manager the discretion, and later you the discretion, city council, to violate rights and liberties. And you'll see them make arguments about why it's necessary, why it's smart. But you won't hear them talk about how the Constitution prohibits it, the supreme law of the land prohibits it. Part of the emergency powers that the city has granted itself are to detain people in the city's property. Like throw somebody in City Hall, lock the doors, or I suppose. It says detain people and impound property. Doesn't say anything about due process. And Councilwoman Mary Coburn brings that up. But you're going to see the arrogant pomposity of 3 council members. The mayor, Mark Money Mover Sheldon, Vice Mayor Paul Casto, you'll hear his mumblings, and Michael Jarman. You're going to see all that. This is important stuff. It also, of course, would they can have curfews. And they talked a lot about what ifs. Well, what if there's a mass shooting? We've got to be able to respond to that. No kidding. No kidding. Every community does. But you shouldn't use that to justify all the other stuff. Law enforcement deals with that. And it's not perfect. It's not timely. Anytime there's a shooting, anytime there's any of those kinds of threats to life, seconds count. And police are usually minutes away. And passing an ordinance that says limit rights and liberties, for God's sake. But, we can talk about it could be a good thing if this happened and that happened. There's no doubt it could be a good thing if this happens or that happens. You can lay out scenarios and say it could be a good thing. But when you're discussing public policy, that's not the conversation. That's a conversation about how we raise our kids. Not if a government can violate the supreme law of the land and your rights. Government exists first and foremost to defend and protect your rights. Do you ever think about this kind of stuff? What is your paramount political value? I'm going to just, what is your paramount political value? What is the first thing government should do? I'll give you three. How would you rank these? Safety, liberty, fairness. Should government make life more fair? Is that its proper role? Should government protect your liberty? Should government, is its number one role to keep you safe? Meaning that everything else is secondary. What's the Fourth Amendment say? What's the Fifth Amendment say? So whenever I consider public policy, Bernie, what do you think of whatever? Healthcare. I go through at least, and I start with three things. I run it through three questions. One, is it permitted? Is it constitutional? If I was up there, every policy, every ordinance that comes up, I would say, is it constitutional? Are we permitted to do this? Not we can do it, and unless we get challenged, the people have to just deal with it. Not that. Because I actually give a damn about the oath of office. So, is it permitted? Is question number one. Is it constitutional? Question number two is, at what cost? And not just at what cost money-wise, at what cost to your liberty? And number three, what evidence on the ground is there that this policy works? Because most policies are, first of all, misnamed. Think about it on a national level. The Affordable Care Act is so unaffordable, it requires subsidies. The Patriot Act is so unpatriotic. I mean, it goes on and on. The Consumer Protection Act hoses consumers. So I'm talking about where's the evidence that it works. And that's only after the other two. So this is public policy we're talking about. And you're going to hear them up there talking about if it's a good thing and who you can trust. We can trust Drew Whitman. He's the former police chief. Nobody has more expertise than Drew. And Cole's a lawyer, so he's got to be right. That you're going to hear this. You're going to hear this. And we trust Drew. So we can give one person the power, the made-up power, the illegitimate power to detain people. But for not more than 42 days, though. To impound property, but not more than 42 days, though. Because safety and the welfare of the city comes first. That is what they say their paramount value is. Paramount political value. Now, at least the city manager, Drew Whitman, does talk a little bit about what I think this is really about. And what I think this is really about is in the event of an emergency, a real emergency like we had in 2018 with Hurricane Michael. You've got city employees working lots of overtime and hazard pay, all kinds of stuff. And so the city doesn't want to incur that cost. And if they pass this, it's a check mark that they can get FEMA money to reimburse the employees. I think that that's what this is mostly about. It's about the city trying to get FEMA to pay the employees for overtime. And at what cost? At the cost of your rights and liberty. That's at what cost? And these people think it's okay. Well, Bernie, they're the experts up there sitting up there. Really, they're the experts. If it were up to the experts, I should decide. Bernie, what makes you an expert? I have a degree in political science. I've been studying this stuff for a quarter of a century. Now, none of these people would ever debate me on the subject, ever. By the way, that is how you recognize propaganda. That's the number one way you recognize propaganda. When the powers that be start calling it misinformation or there's no evidence, or it's a conspiracy theory, when they pretend to be infallible, when they pretend to know everything and everybody else is misinformation and wrong, and we've seen this a lot over the past 5 years, that is a red flag for propaganda, especially when the press is reading their press releases as news. But to me, the first way to recognize it is when you get a person in a position of power who gets invited, say, I don't know, on Tucker Carlson or any show, any real interview that's going to ask real questions, where you got to dive in and answer the talking point and have a real discussion where ideas collide in a respectful way. When the people in power say, we're not going to give oxygen to that conspiracy theory, that is the best way to recognize propaganda. Because people in power are not afraid of misinformation. They're afraid of real information getting out that they can't answer. Am I right or wrong? July 27 is a Thursday at 9 a.m. They're going to vote for this a second time. They can shut your business down. They can decide who's an essential worker, who's not an essential worker. Golf cart, low speed vehicles, all that you're screwed. But Bernie, that's only if one guy says there's an emergency. Okay. Under no circumstance should any ordinance, any legislation at any level have the words limit rights and liberties. I don't care what justification comes after that. And you're going to see, we're going to get to it. You're going to see what justification comes after that. You're not going to want to miss this discussion. You're going to watch these mensas, these political governing mensas, have this conversation right after this. It's a hot time in Florida, and my friend Ryan can make sure your air conditioning is running at peak efficiency. He could even install a new one, built to a higher standard, American standard. Find out more at PCAirrepair.com. Don't let back pain and neck pain get you down. Find relief at Brown Chiropractic Center on St. Andrews Boulevard in Panama City. Dr. Sherry Brown helps people heal naturally with chiropractic adjustments and deep tissue massage. Call 769-3777. All right, here we are. We're at the meeting. You're going to hear the mayor. If we were in Lynn Haven, you would hear the mayor read, but it's the mayor here. You're going to hear Mayor Mark Pay-to-Play Sheldon. That's the wrong mayor. That was the last mayor. Mark Money Mover Sheldon. Money Mover Sheldon. I'll get him right. You're going to hear him identify the name of this. And then you're going to hear Cole Davis do a very short reading of it, then public comments, and then you're going to hear them. Now, I do want you to know this is not brand new. These are powers that they gave themselves a couple years ago. And what they're doing is amending it because the state is forcing Panama City Beach to limit these powers to only 42 days. So it's going to be presented as, this has already been there. What's your problem, dude? It's already been there, lady. We're just reeling it back. You ought to be happy about that. All right. I'll comment throughout.
Yes, ma'am. Moving on. Item 2 is ordinance 1625.
An ordinance of the City of Panama City Beach, Florida, amending the city's Code of Ordinances, Chapter 29, related to emergency management, amending definitions, amending declarations of emergencies, amending the duration of emergency orders, incorporating the city's comprehensive emergency management plan, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, providing for severability, and providing an immediately effective date.
At this time, we'll take public comment on item 2. Ma'am, I think you had a comment.
The Beacon of Bay County.
Again,
There's Jody.
Jody Moore, and I live in Lynn Haven. And I'm out here because, I shop at the beach. I come out here, I go to the beach. So, why would I care about something like this? And reading through this and, at first blush, seems like it's an attempt to control chaos, which can happen sometimes. We all know about spring break issues. I've been in the middle of stuff like that myself. And perhaps it's well-intentioned, but there's that old saying about the road to hell being paved with good intentions. So just looking at this, it just seems like it's unconstitutional. Now, every one of you swore to uphold the Constitution. And if you pass this, I don't think that that's what you're doing. I think you need to take another look at this. Again, that's something that you swore to do. And I just really think that you're opening yourself up to a bunch of lawsuits if you pass this. I know that if I lived out here and someone wanted to cut off my water and my electricity and they wanted to arrest me because I'm on the beach past midnight.
By the way, that's one of the powers, all right, is to shut off your electricity. That's one of their powers. This is the same city that used that power on a resident who had 2 brand new homes that one of the council members said blocked his view of the Gulf. So that attorney, Cole Davis, went to Judge Ana Maria Garcia back in 2017, 2018, something like that, and lied to her and told her that those were matchboxes ready to combust at any moment, and they needed to break in and do an inspection of her home. Cole Davis lied to a judge and told a judge that. And they turned her water off as punishment until she complied. This city and this attorney has a history of doing that. Think about it. They go to a judge and tell a judge that these brand new homes are fire traps, and they turn the water off. This is who's telling us, trust us. We'll use good judgment.
Something like that. That just seems just going way too far. Again, reading through all of this, this is what my impressions that I was getting. So I really think that you all need to take another look at this and pull back. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments on item 1? Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna speed through some of these public comments. This is Molly,
meditate.
by the way.
Will we pray if our rights are taken away? Forests.
It's good stuff, but I need to just.
That's not.
I don't want to go on too long. Molly is the one that I feature often, especially with low water. She's if everybody was a citizen who gave a damn like Molly, we would have no problems. This is the second time or the third time I've had to go up during this meeting, and you're going to see me say that the last thing that I said I was wrong. You get a chance to watch me being wrong, and I'm not going to hide it. But I want you to see how easy it is to say you're wrong. Why is it so hard for them to do it when they find out they're wrong? See, I don't want to go on being wrong. It doesn't embarrass me to be corrected. So you're going to get a kick out of this. I misunderstood something, and I accused all of them of misunderstanding, and they correct me. And I would argue this is how you should handle it.
Hello, I'm Bernie. Last time up here. Thank you for addressing the previous agenda item. I will say, though, I don't think a single one of you understood the gentleman's point. by only allowing one vendor, if they have to ask 100 people and all 100 people have to agree on one, it is impossible for the one to know.
That's
Yes,
not correct. That's not the case.
That's not the case.
It's each individual home has its individual, if there's 100 homes, they can have 100 different contracts.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, no, they don't
Let
have to
it
get all,
be.
they don't have, they
let
don't
it-
have to
let
get
it-
all 100.
Let it be
No.
noted that Thompson's wrong and admits he's wrong, and I'm glad to be wrong. Thank you.
Yes,
All
sir.
right.
Nope.
On this one, I hope I'm wrong too, because this one's even more serious. I want to read to you from the ordinance. And I know that maybe you'll say this has already been around. It's already here. We're just adding to it or doing something extra for the emergency powers. I want to read a sentence to you. And ask yourselves if growing up, Drew, I know Drew a little bit, the city manager, former police chief, who I thought was a very good police chief. And I mean, when we were growing up, did we ever think we were going to enforce what I'm about to read you? This ordinance that gives one person, the city manager, the authority to declare a state of emergency. Here's what it says in section 29-445, if anybody would like to look this up. It says any order issued in response to a non-weather related emergency that limits the rights or liberties of individuals or businesses shall not extend beyond a total duration of 42 days. So the city is saying that we'll only, if one person does it, 42 days is the limit to which we'll.
So I was wrong there too. I want to make sure you understand. The ordinance reads that the city manager can violate your rights and liberties for up to 72 hours. The council can come behind them within that period and they can extend it for 42 days. So it is 42 days, but that's an important distinction.
Will limit your rights and liberties. And the attorney will say, well, it's balanced with safety and security and the well-being of the city. Come on, guys. You're talking about violating rights and liberties. I also want to point out in another section about discretionary actions, it says that the city can be used to detain people and to, what's the word? To take property, to hold property, to detain
Impound
people. What are you talking about? Is it due process? Are they arrested? When they're detained, are they arrested or are they just brought here? What are you talking about? Please explain that. City property can be used to detain people. Does that mean they're arrested? And if not, what's the distinction? Yeah, please. This is extremely concerning. It's extremely concerning, the smug look on most of your faces, Phil. I appreciate you. The rights and liberties, are you here to defend that and protect that? And what did we grow up thinking about, Drew? All right, thank you. I hope I'm wrong on this one. I really do. Thank you.
Any other public comment on this item? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the Beacon of Bay County. This is Gap Parker. Both the ladies
Sherry
showed up.
Parker, Beacon of Bay County. I also live in Lynn Haven. I would like to echo what the others have said in reference to this rule that y'all are going to try to put in place. First of all, it's unconstitutional. It's going to be challenged. To give that much power to a city manager without the rest of the commission's vote? Are you kidding me? The city manager is going to be able to do all this stuff without anybody else's vote? That's unconstitutional. Y'all need to read your constitution and get it right. Because giving that much power to one person, to one unelected person, is outrageous. Thank you.
Any other public comment on this item?
All right, now look at the arrogant pomposity. Now you're going to hear them explain why you should trust them. All right, and only one person's going to stand up for what's right. You're not going to believe this conversation and the arrogance coming right up.
When your life is on the line, hire the lawyer who lives in our community, works in our community, and worships in our community. I'm Al Saulene, your Panama City Beach lawyer. 850-215-0628.
You want to look good? You want to feel good? Little John's Big and Tall is where it's at. Right across the street from Sky's Pizza Pie, 5700 North Davis Highway. You can find out more online at littlejohnsbigandtall.com. He's also a member of the iTex trading community, where your iTex dollars are welcome.
All right. So what do you say, council?
Seeing none, we'll close that. Mr. Davis, anything to add?
I will address the 42 days provision is really just us codifying a limitation on your power that didn't exist before. And that's based on an update to the state statute that regulates emergency powers, which says essentially the exact same language that we put in the ordinance. It's simply taking the language from the state statute and codifying it into your ordinances.
So that's from state statute.
Yes, sir.
Is this ordinance unconstitutional in your opinion?
Not in my opinion, no.
And you have a law degree. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I want you to listen closely to this. I hope I hope people remember this when elections come and more is revealed about what these guys have done and what they've taken. When these comments by the council members, Michael Jarman says, and this came from the state. Yeah, Mike, it came from the state, and that limits what you can do, but it doesn't mean you have to do it. You don't have to adopt the emergency powers. The state places limits on the cities. It doesn't mean the cities have to grant this power. All right. And then when you hear, I think it's Vice Mayor Casto say, do you think this is unconstitutional? And Cole Davis, the attorney, says, not in my opinion. You'll hear when Casto asks, is this constitutional? You're going to hear, and I think it's Sheldon, you'll hear him giggling through his nose. You'll hear him laughing. That's what he thinks of all this. He's laughing through his nose at the question. Y'all should really come and watch this. It's one thing to see it from this angle. It's another to really see it in person. And then you've got the snarky mayors say, and you've got a law degree, as though everybody with a law degree would have the same opinion. This is, again, the propaganda type stuff. Do you think that attorneys could argue about this? I mean, the statement that, and you've got a law degree, as opposed to these dummies. You know, a judge has a law degree. As a matter of fact, H.L. Mencken said a judge is a lawyer who writes his own exam papers. A judge is just a lawyer who gets elected or appointed. And they disagree with each other all the time. Every lawsuit or every criminal case, there's nothing but disagreements. Such a snarky, and I'm going to rewind just the last few seconds. See if you can hear Mayor Sheldon giggling right here. Here you go.
Is anything to add?
I will address the 42 days provision is really just us codifying a limitation on your power that didn't exist before. And that's based on an update to the state statute that regulates emergency powers, which says essentially the exact same language that we put in the ordinance. It's simply taking the language from the state statute and codifying it into your ordinances.
So that's from state statute.
Yes, sir.
Is this ordinance unconstitutional in your opinion?
Not in my opinion, no.
And you have a law degree. I appreciate it.
Yeah, in my opinion, and I've been here a long time, and I know Drew, and I don't think Drew will abuse this. And during several hurricanes that I went through, the last one 5 years ago, most of us in here went through it, but we lost communication. We could.
I want to explain to you how, I'm just going to say it. I want to explain to you how dumb Paul Casto is and how ignorant he is of this. At least I admit when I'm wrong. The statute says in this area that we're concerned about, the 42 days, the limits of rights and liberties, it says in non-weather emergencies. It specifies non-weather emergencies. So we're talking about a technological emergency. We're talking about a terrorist act. And Mensa Casto here is talking about weather emergencies. That's not what this is about, Paul. Paul doesn't know what he's talking about. But do you ever think Paul's going to do what I did and say, oh, I was wrong about that. Thanks for the clarification. Let me reconsider now. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And by the way, the whole purpose of the supreme law of the land that limits these guys' power, the Constitution, the whole purpose, Thomas Jefferson has a really terrific quote, and Casto, of course, would Jefferson, is he the running back for Alabama? I mean, he wouldn't know who Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson said, in questions of power, then, let no more be heard about confidence in man, but bind him with the chains of the Constitution from mischief. It's not about whether we trust the person in office or not, Paul. It's about the power being taken when you don't have the power. He's lost on all counts here, this guy. So embarrassing.
Couldn't communicate and didn't have cell phones. So the police were bringing notes to us at different various locations where we couldn't get it up to City Hall for a couple of days.
He thinks he's making a point.
You got all kinds of issues like possibly having to close down a section of Front Beach Road that's washed out, and you can't get a hold of all of us to hold a meeting. But I think it's just designed temporarily if you have to make a 6 o'clock curfew, or there's a lot of different things that the city manager could do that needs to be done in an emergency situation. And we're in an area in Florida where we go through these. So it's just a tool that he can use if he needs to. And if he abuses it, we'll take it away. That's where I'm at with it.
We looked at this, had some conversations a couple years ago when we had some civil unrest. Chief, you came to me, we talked about, do we call an emergency meeting? And you said, if we need to do something, we need to do it right now. I said, well, it's going to take probably 5 hours to notice and do an emergency meeting. You said, we don't have 5 hours if we're going to make some action. This gives the city manager that authority.
I want you to remember something I told you just a couple of days ago. Whenever Mark Sheldon is lying, he has a couple of tells. He will growl, or he'll do his arm like this. His arm will start jumping. Sometimes he does them both together when it's a real doozy. Now, I want you to watch closely. I'm going to rewind in about 10 seconds here. Watch Sheldon's arm. Here's where you know he's being dishonest. It's a tell. He would be a terrible poker player if you know how to play.
Had some conversations a couple years ago when we
Watch
had
his left
some
arm.
civil unrest. Chief, you
His
came to
left
me,
arm.
We talked about, do we call an emergency meeting? And you said, if we need to do something, we need to do it right now. I said, well, it's going to take probably 5 hours to notice and do an emergency.
There it
meeting.
goes.
You said, we don't have 5 hours if we're going to make some action. This gives the city manager that authority to take an action that I know at one time you wanted. We didn't do it. And we wish we didn't wish we did. We didn't do it. We got through. We moved on. We made changes in the next year. At the time, I don't think there's anybody I trust more than our city manager.
Back to that.
As a former chief of police, I don't think anybody else knows the things that he's been through and seen. And he's got his chief's back. He's got this city's back. And I have absolutely no qualms about giving him the authority if we have an unrest time, or if we have a out of control Airbnb party and those type of things that we've seen in the past, to do what he needs to do to make sure that it gets under control and we continue to be the family destination that we are. So if he has to do that, I'm all for it.
Is there a significance of the 42 days? Could it be 36 hours, 48 hours?
Well,
Long enough for us to get together somehow, some way?
Yes, sir. So the city manager's authority is limited to 72 hours.
Yeah.
If you want, if the emergency order needs to be extended beyond 72 hours, the council has to meet and extend it.
Correct.
The city manager's authority is only limited to 72 hours. Now, your authority is now limited at 42 days. So after you hit hour 72, you've got to come in and extend that order, and you can only extend that order to the extent that it infringes on anyone's individual liberties. It can only extend for 42 days. And that is language from the state legislature.
Did you see how he caught himself? He almost said violate, but he wanted to make sure he used the right word there. You know,
But you can make it as short as you want it to be.
But he has 72 hours now.
Right.
Yeah. Now, address one side of this. The changes from the original ordinance is adding weather related.
Yes, sir.
And then some codification.
Yes, sir.
so this is Michael Jarman. He is the Adrian Welly, like Mexico Beaches, dishonest, smart but dishonest councilman who only tells you half the story. That's very much Michael Jarman's personality. He's extremely dishonest. Listen to this.
Okay. So that's the change from the original. I know that people on the beach were looking for some quick action to what happened out here.
Yes, sir.
And this addresses that. One thing I was thinking, and I've had multiple meetings on this, is that if you look at this ordinance, it is a tool that bites both ways to anyone that institutes it. So in the respect of the city manager, if they institute this ordinance and they make a mistake in instituting it, that could prove very bad for them. If the council institutes or takes away the action of the city manager and they make the wrong decision, or we make the wrong decision, whoever's up here, then that's going to go bad for them. So I know for me, understanding that, I'm not going to make a decision unless I'm darn sure it's the right one. And
See, this is where I really wish that you would consider this. This guy, just like Adrian Welly, there's a few people like that have this personality. Jeff McConnell was another one. They pretend that they're infallible. Michael Jarman will say misinformation, conspiracy theory. I'm going to make sure I make the right decision. The guy claims to be infallible. He's incapable of making a mistake. So don't worry. He's going to make the right decision. So go ahead. Well, we're going to go ahead and take the power to violate your rights and liberties because I'm that smart and Drew is that good.
And I'm going to make sure that his decision is the absolute right one. So that everyone understands that. And like Mr. Davis said, the city manager's authority is for 72 hours. Now, we can convene a council meeting before that 72 hours at any time and change the action of the city manager. So I think that's important to understand. Also, and this, now, Mr. Whitman, our city manager, has a huge amount of institutional knowledge in law enforcement.
Here we go with the experts, right? We know these are the excuses for that government always uses to violate your rights: safety, the welfare of the city, well-being of the city, expediency. We got to act now, and and experts say. So he's the expert. Cole is the expert in law. Drew's the expert in law enforcement. He's got more experience than anybody. So therefore, he's got to be right. The old expert, leaning on the old expert reason.
And things of that nature. So, and it's understandable that depending on the city manager, this might change.
What? What?
And the point of being a non-elected person, he's still accountable to all of us. If we don't like it, every decision he makes, has to be accountable to us.
Look, he's talking like he has a point. Sheldon is not all that bright, but he's smart enough. He's just extremely opportunistic and motivated. He's very, very ambitious. But this argument here, the point of an unelected person having that power is a legitimate point. Sheldon acts like if elected people take your liberty, then it's justified. So we got you for being wrong on that too. He's talking like he has a point.
That's the tough part of that job, right? At any minute, his job is at will, and he knows it. Like, tripping don't mean that bad, but you got to make good decisions. You got to make right decisions because you're held accountable. And if you don't, then that's the way it works. So,
well, I understand the need for when there's civil unrest.
So Mary Coburn was elected a year and a half ago. And I always feel like a politician when I say I'm honored. She actually asked me to administer the oath of office, which really, imagine that, really thrilled the mayor and the council because they had to call me up. And Mary Coburn and I don't agree on a lot of politics. But boy, Mary Coburn sure understands this. Listen to this.
Yes, that we need to react swiftly and decisions need to be made on the spot. And I'm comfortable with setting out guidelines for those incidences. But I feel like that this ordinance is more than that. I feel that it's overreaching. It expands the city's power to include natural, technological, and man-made disasters that are imminent, whether or not the county or the state declares an emergency. This ordinance bypasses due process under the laws of our country.
The audience like that.
Chips away at our personal freedom. This council is elected by the citizens. They trust us to make these decisions, not one city employee. Now, city employees and councils come and go. And who's going to remember when we come and go that we need to change this ordinance back or get rid of this ordinance altogether? So I'm not supporting this the way it is today, the way it's written today.
okay.
Well, I would say that, technological,
All right, here comes Mr. Know-It-All and the guy who only wants to read half the sentence. So he's going to make this point, and I don't want to interrupt him, so I want to tell you to watch for it. He's going to say it doesn't mean that he has the power to close down the whole city. We'll just pick parts of the city. So some people will lose their rights and liberties while others don't, based on their expertise and their goodwill. But listen closely to him.
the easiest way to say is a terrorist attack. I hate to say it, but a terrorist attack. If something happens, someone,
this is like pre-crime. We have to pass laws to violate your liberty. You know what I'm saying?
we have an event and someone opens fire on the event. That's an emergency that needs to be dealt with immediately.
And I'm
So-
sure that the police
Let him
department
finish.
has procedures.
Let
in
him finish.
place for
Let
that.
him finish. Don't.
But not to maintain control of the geographic area. And that's another.
So yeah, here's where he's going to read half the sentence basically. So what he's saying is that they should have the power to detain people in city property and impound property in city property, city premises, without due process. They already have all the power necessary to respond to that. What the hell does detaining somebody in city premises or impounding somebody's property in city? See what they do? This argument is a stacking the deck argument, right? Where he'll give the craziest situation possible as an example. And here he's going to do it again. He's going to say it's just for parts of the city. Watch.
Another important thing to understand is that this ordinance is not a wide sweeping ordinance in the fact that it can be applied within a very specific geographic area.
It can be, but
and
it
to
gives
address one of your
the whole
concerns,
city
and I
jurisdiction.
present this in this ordinance, we put in that upon the change of a city manager, it's reviewed.
He thinks he said something smart.
I still think it's overreaching and too broad.
In which way?
I think we should address civil unrest. We know when storms are coming. We can be prepared for that. The council can make decisions ahead of time and make specific approvals for how things are going to move forward.
So, go ahead.
Council's been through that before. Staff's been through that before. We have experience there.
Okay, sir.
I don't think we need to put it in this ordinance.
Can you give an example of weather related and why it's important?
Me? Okay. This has come up a couple times.
Look at his face. Look at this. Look at this. This is incredible. Here's an example of, look at this. This is, there's two things. Number one, they know that the violating rights and liberties for 42 days is for non-weather emergencies. And what they're doing is confusing the issue to act like it's about weather. That's why it's one reason Jarman is laughing this way. The other reason that Jarman is laughing this way is because this is what happens in local politics around here. This is how a group of men treat women. And we see this in Mexico Beach. We saw this in Lynn Haven. This is what they do. Look at his face. Give us an example. And then that made Sheldon chuckle. And now they're all laughing because they're going to throw you off and start talking about weather. And I'm not going to entertain all that because it's completely, they've just derailed the conversation because it's not about a weather emergency. It's about a non-weather emergency and a technological emergency. And they're up there giggling because they've now changed the conversation and they're going to talk about how bad Hurricane Michael was. And it was. I was in the middle of it. Bad liability, as Jerry Smith might say in Mexico Beach. But they all voted 4-1. Mary Coburn voted no. And but it doesn't pass unless they get at least 3 votes on July 27, Thursday morning at 9 a.m. And if there's a smattering of people there to object, it will not matter. If there's a whole bunch of people there to object, it almost always never matters. But that doesn't absolve us from being good citizens and getting on record that we oppose it for the right reasons. All right. That's all you need to know. I'm not going to go back and watch these guys giggling and chuckling and doing the routine that they do. But I wanted you to hear this and see this so that you knew I wasn't bullshit. So you knew I wasn't giving you misinformation. So you know it wasn't conspiracy theory type stuff. Hey, I'm gonna include this in my Friday newsletter, which is an email every Friday. If you want to see every show and see every Facebook post about local corruption that I cover, but you can't always be on Facebook, or maybe you know somebody's not on Facebook, they'd like to see it, then I really, really hope that you will sign up for the newsletter, subscribe to the newsletter. It takes like 20 seconds. All you do is just put your email in. And then every Friday, you'll get an email. You can watch every show in this email. You can see every post in this email. It's free. Just put your name, bernie.substack.com. bernie.substack.com. Sign up, subscribe for free every Friday. You'll never miss a thing. And there's a way to support me if you'd like to, but you don't have to. bernie.substack.com. And by the way, I also want to thank the Unknown Patriot for your support from my independent efforts. It matters. Your support is the only reason, all of you, is the only reason I can do this. Is if I sat next to Tom Huey Lewis in the news, Tom Lewis at WMBB, do you think I'd be able to tell you this? If I was on Talk Radio 101, can I tell you this? No. Because of you, I can tell you this. And I appreciate it very much. All right. I'm going to run. I'll keep an eye on this. July 27, 9 a.m., Thursday morning at City Hall. Be there.